and he was waiting to get on a plane. And it was just the most wonderful news we could have had.
Detained American teacher Marc Fogel, arrested on drug charges in 2021, is coming home after the U.S. spent years saying he was wrongfully detained. Tonight, my conversation with Fogel's mother and what the White House offered in return. A triple winter storm threat right now. At least 26 states are under winter weather alerts as millions brace for possible flash flooding and landslides.
We're not going to buy anything. We're going to have it, and we're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that there's going to be peace, and there's not going to be any problem, and nobody's going to question it.
With the King of Jordan right by his side, President Trump says the U.S. is going to take Gaza as the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas appears to be on the brink of collapse. How the King responded.
I'd had no idea that I would be working on legislation that would require that the city implement rat birth control.
They're considered New York's most pesky pets, but is there a more humane way to reduce the rat population? Inside the movement to use birth control to curb the crisis.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with some positive news. After 3.5 years, American prisoner Marc Fogel, who the U.S. says was wrongfully detained in Russia, is a free man again, set to land back in the United States tonight. And we've just learned the president will greet Fogel at the snowy White House tonight at 10 p.m. The American teacher was serving a 14-year prison sentence. Tonight, clearly a happy man celebrating on the plane ride back home. Fogel was detained on charges of having medically prescribed marijuana. The Trump administration negotiated an exchange, though it's unclear what Russia received in that exchange. But the deal could signal a thaw in U.S.-Russian relations ahead of negotiations over ending the war in Ukraine. We're standing by to hear from Fogel's mom and his sister. But first, here's ABC's chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl.
These are the first images tonight of Pennsylvania teacher Marc Fogel smiling, finally free after spending the last 3.5 years in a Russian prison. Fogel was arrested in Moscow in August 2021. Airport surveillance video shows the moment a police dog flagged Fogel's luggage, leading to a search. Fogel's family says he was carrying a small amount of medically prescribed marijuana, but he was sentenced to 14 years in a penal colony. The White House says Fogel was freed as part of an exchange with Russia. Tonight, when our Rachel Scott asked President Trump what the U.S. gave the Russians in return, he didn't directly answer, but talked about the need to end the war in Ukraine.
Not much. No, they were very nice. We were treated very nicely by Russia, actually. I hope that's the beginning of a relationship where we can end that war.
The exchange that led to Fogel's release was negotiated by President Trump's special envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, who flew to Moscow on his private plane. That is the first known visit to Russia by a senior U.S. official since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. On Sunday, Donald Trump said that he has spoken to Vladimir Putin, although he didn't say when that conversation or conversations took place. Lindsay?
All right, John Karl for us. Thanks, John. We are so grateful to be joined now by Marc Fogel's mom, Alphine Fogel, his sister Anne, and the family's lawyer, Sasha Phillips. Thank you all so much for joining us. And Alphine, let's just start with you. What a moment this must be for you. Express to us how this feels.
Well, I guess it's unreal still. We've been waiting for this time for a long time, and when the news came over, it was unbelievable. We just can't wait to see Marc in person, and until we do, I guess it's not going to be real.
Yeah, and we were just showing a picture, I want to show it again, of your son on the plane heading back to the United States. Give us a sense of that phone call this morning when you received your son talking to you and the significance of hearing him say, "Buongiorno."
Yes, his buongiorno, that was always his greeting. And I said, "Who is this?" Because that's not one of you. And he said, "Well, who else says buongiorno to you?" But it just was such a shocker, and I can't explain the feeling. I actually felt just dizzy for a while until I got my composure, and then I talked to him, and he said he was at the Moscow airport, and he was waiting to get on a plane, and it was just the most wonderful news we could have had.
I'm sure. And Anne, like to bring you in here. I know there was a time when you talked about being worried about the mental and emotional toll that your brother's detention in Russia was taking for the last 3.5 years. Give us a sense of what this moment is like for you.
Well, I can honestly say that Mark is a very resilient person, and the photographs kind of show that. I'm also celebrating early and raising a glass to this great celebration. It's such an enormous relief for all of us. We are so excited, and we'll be convening in Pittsburgh, and it's going to be a great, great day.
And so when is that? When will you and Mom get to see him for the first time?
That's Mark's choice. It depends on how long he decides to stay in the post-isolation support system. He, I think, will be heading to San Antonio, and he needs to stay for as long as he needs to be there, and he will know that. So we'll wait to hear from him.
Understood. And Malphine, I know you're set to celebrate your 96th birthday next month. Happy birthday in advance. I know you fought tirelessly to get your son home.
You.
Did you have any idea that this moment was about to become a reality?
Well, you know, we kept hoping, but it seemed to get further and further away, and we prayed a lot. My entire family prayed his way out of there. Anyway, we just couldn't be more thankful, and he seems to be in fairly good spirits, and we just need to get him home and hug him and hold him and just find out everything that's been going on within his life. He may or may not want to review it, but we need to hear all of it.
And what do you think that first moment will be like when you get a chance to give your son a hug?
I think there'll be a lot of tears.
Yeah.
A lot of tears.
And Anne, want to bring you back in here. I know we all saw the picture of him enjoying that beverage. You have a beverage of choice as well. What do you think the first thing your brother's going to do once he lands back on U.S. soil?
I wouldn't be surprised if he kissed the ground. I'm sure that he is he's so ready to be home.
What are you most looking forward to doing with him again?
I'm looking forward to a very long walk in Montana.
Nice. And give us a sense of how Mark's wife, Jane, and his 2 boys are reacting today.
Everyone is overjoyed, and just like we all screamed in the phone. It was it's a moment that we will all remember for a long time.
And Malphine,
really,
I know that you met with President Trump several times. You last met with him moments before that assassination attempt in Butler in July. You were set to go on stage with him, actually, and you had told him, don't forget his name. What's your message to President Trump tonight?
Well, I just want to thank him profusely. He said he was going to get him out, and I think he certainly was instrumental in doing that. And I just think that we are eternally grateful for his efforts, along with Dave McCormick, Mike Kelly, and Guy Reschenthaler. I think they all had a hand in it, and we just couldn't be happier about it.
I'm sure. All right. Well, Malphine and Anne, and to your lawyer, Sasha, we thank you all so much. Glad to hear this good news.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now to the back-to-back winter storms, leaving more than 100 million Americans on alert tonight, from the plains to the East Coast. In Virginia, near whiteout conditions for drivers, as state police say there have been more than 300 crashes today. Fortunately, none of them fatal. Our chief meteorologist Ginger Z is tracking it all. But first, ABC's Stephanie Ramos reports from D.C.
Tonight, a treacherous mix of snow, freezing rain, and ice from a sprawling winter storm wreaking havoc across half the country. Whiteout conditions in Virginia, up to a foot of snow in spots. Multiple tractor trailers stranded along Interstates 81 and 64 near Stanton. The governor declaring a state of emergency. Traffic cameras on I-95 showing multiple accidents near Richmond. Virginia State Police reporting more than 24 injuries across the state. Snowfall rates of an inch an hour in the nation's capital. Schools and federal offices shutting down early. And up to an inch of ice weighing down trees across northwest Arkansas. Huge branches blocking roads in Fallsville. Icicles hanging off drooping utility lines. In Spencer County, Kentucky, the sheriff's office out on the roads, surveying the conditions all morning. The system stretching from the mid-Atlantic all the way to Houston, where powerful thunderstorms inundated roads.
Stephanie Ramos joins us now from the nation's capital, and I guess we should be able to see the Washington Monument behind you, Stephanie.
Right, it's there, but we just can't see it. That's how poor visibility is right now. The snow is really coming down here in D.C. Up to half a foot of snow expected here in D.C. And then in some areas south of the district, they could get even more. And then tomorrow, there's another system on the way, and that will bring the rain. Lindsay.
Quite a few winter wallops there back to back. Stephanie Ramos, our thanks to you. ABC's chief meteorologist Ginger Z is tracking it all for us. Hey, Ginger.
Hey, Lindsay, so more than a foot of snow has already fallen in parts of West Virginia and a place like Iron Gate, Virginia, which is about an hour north of Roanoke. That's where some of the heaviest totals will be south of Washington, D.C., but they'll still be getting a couple more inches. You saw it in Stephanie's shot. Overall, that's going to make them surge above average. Delaware is going to be getting it tonight, Baltimore, Maryland, even southern New Jersey, and a little touch here, New York or even coastal Connecticut in the overnight hours. It'll all be gone by tomorrow morning, and then our attention will be focused on the second storm, and that one is where we start in Kansas City. Tomorrow morning's commute going to be a wreck there. So it's going to be tough to get around. 4 to 7 inches for them. Chicago, some, 15 inches below normal. They're going to try to make up 3 to 6 of it tomorrow. Detroit, 2 to 4. But do you see that severe storms forecast area from New Orleans right through Jackson, Mississippi and Birmingham, Alabama? That's not just for damaging wind tomorrow afternoon and evening, but there's a tornado threat that's going to be spinning up there. We will start tomorrow night with a little burst of frozen precipitation, both snow and ice, depending on where you are on the map. But then it will all transition to rain. And speaking of rain, Lindsay, Thursday looks destructive in Southern California. There are parts of Southern California, like San Luis Obispo, some of the mountains there, that could see 5 to 10 inches of rain fall really quickly. And if you'll remember, they've had all of those fires, the burn scars. That land does not hold that water well. We are concerned about mudslides and debris flows going into the end of the week.
The last thing they needed. All right, Ginger Z, our thanks to you. President Trump is standing by his plans for Gaza during a meeting with Jordan's King Abdullah at the White House. The president repeated his intentions to, quote, take Gaza, saying the U.S. has the authority to do so. He also pressured the king to welcome Palestinian refugees. ABC's chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce was there and has this report.
Tonight, sitting next to King Abdullah of Jordan, a key leader in the Arab world, the president saying the U.S. won't buy Gaza, they will take it.
How is the U.S. going to own Gaza? Your White House has made clear taxpayer dollars won't be used for this. So what money are you going to use to buy Gaza?
We're not going to buy anything. We're going to have it, and we're going to keep it, and we're going to make sure that there's going to be peace.
But reporters pressing him.
What is that? No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it.
I asked him how.
And Mr. President, take it under what authority? It is sovereign territory.
Under the U.S. authority.
But Palestinians don't want to leave their homeland.
Where exactly do you want them to live?
Well, it's not where I want them to live. It's going to be where we ultimately choose as a group. And I believe we'll have a parcel of land in Jordan. I believe we'll have a parcel of land in Egypt.
But Egypt and Jordan have rejected those calls. Instead, the king today announcing of the 2 million Palestinians living in Gaza, Jordan will take in 2,000 sick and cancer-stricken children.
Well, I think what we said, I have to look at the best interests of my country.
Mary Bruce joins us now from the White House. Mary, after their meetings, what did we hear from King Abdullah?
Well, Lindsay, the king said that he was firm and, quote, reiterated Jordan's steadfast position against the displacement of Palestinians in Gaza, adding this is the unified Arab position. And tonight, Egypt is also sending a clear message. President el-Sisi was slated to meet here at the White House with President Trump later this month, but tonight he has now postponed his trip indefinitely. Lindsay.
Mary Bruce from a very snowy White House. Mary, thank you. And another remarkable scene at the White House today. Elon Musk stood beside President Trump in the Oval Office defending his access to at least 15 government agencies. Reporters questioned whether Elon Musk is being transparent, if he's policing himself, and if there's a conflict of interest given Musk's own company has contracts with the Pentagon. Our Rachel Scott was asking many of those questions and has the latest.
Tonight, an extraordinary scene playing out in the Oval Office. President Trump sitting at the Resolute desk, and standing next to him, Elon Musk and his young son, holding court for roughly a half an hour.
Your detractors, Mr. Musk.
I have to what?
Including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted. We have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Musk, the world's richest man with billions of dollars in federal contracts, has been given enormous power. His Department of Government Efficiency already accessing at least 15 agencies.
Mr. Musk, the White House says that you will identify and excuse yourself from any conflicts of interest that you may have. Does that mean that you are in effect policing yourself? What are the checks and balances that are in place to ensure that there is accountability and transparency?
Well, we actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the Doge handle on X and to the Doge website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent. In fact, I don't think there's been, I don't know of a case where an organization has been more transparent than the Doge organization. So, the kind of things we're doing are, I think, very, very simple and basic. These are not individual judgment decisions. These are about simply having sensible checks and balances in the system itself to ensure that taxpayer money is spent well. So it's got nothing to do with, like, say, a contract with some company of mine at all.
But if there is a conflict of interest when it comes to you yourself, for instance, you've received billions of dollars in federal contracts when it comes to the Pentagon, for instance, which the president I know has directed you to look into.
Yeah.
Are you policing yourself in that? Is there any sort of accountability check and balance in place that would provide any transparency for the American people?
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like, wait a second, hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately.
Including you yourself.
Yes. But transparency is what builds trust, not simply somebody asserting trust. So not somebody saying they're trustworthy, but transparency, so you can see everything that's going on. And then you can see, am I doing something that benefits one of my companies or not? It's totally obvious.
And if we thought that, we would not let him do that segment or look in that area if we thought there was a lack of transparency or a conflict of interest.
But I followed up.
If you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense, is that a conflict of interest?
Yes, which we definitely need to do and are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX.
Musk and Trump have complained several of their plans are stalled in the courts, raising concerns the administration may defy a judge's orders. Today, the president told me that won't happen.
If a judge does block one of your policies, part of your agenda, will you abide by that ruling? Will you comply with that order?
I'll abide by the courts, and then I'll have to appeal it. But then what he's done is he's slowed down the momentum.
As Musk's team tears through government agencies, Musk today acknowledging he has sometimes posted misinformation about their findings.
Well, first of all, some of the things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. I mean, we will make mistakes, but we'll act quickly to correct any mistakes.
Quite a scene there. Rachel Scott joins us now. And Rachel, what more are we learning tonight about Musk's specific power and his role as a special government employee?
Yes, Lindsay. So there in the Oval Office, I will tell you, it was clear just how much power Elon Musk has in this White House. Tonight, we are learning he is about to be even more powerful. The president signing an executive order shortly after we left the Oval Office that directs all federal agencies to work with Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency to cut staffing and limit hiring. It also gives Musk and his team this broad authority to decide which positions should or should not be filled across the federal government, Lindsay.
A lot of power there. All right, Rachel Scott from the briefing room at the White House. Thanks so much, Rachel. Now back to the Trump administration's proposed cuts to government agencies and programs, including to the National Institute of Health. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the move, but we want to get into what's at stake here. For that, we're joined by Dr. Larry Corey, a renowned expert on virology at one of the nation's top cancer research institutes. Dr. Corey, thank you so much for your time. As we know, the NIH is our country's primary agency for medical research. What would be the consequences, would you say, from Trump's proposed cuts?
Well, I think the consequences would be quite draconian for our research infrastructure, as well as the people who are currently working in medical research. Of the $48 million a year on the NIH budget, $40 billion gets distributed throughout our country's research institutions through a very highly competitive scientific review system. It's really the ultimate meritocracy. And the American people see this through their medical schools and the medical research facilities that essentially are paid for it by their states and their local regions, and all the innovations that emanate, let's say the cholesterol-lowering drugs, the immunotherapy for cancers, the discovery of the new anti-obesity medications, the inroads that are showing, let's say, Alzheimer's disease are due to excess protein accumulations, and the things that we're now utilizing in order to prevent this from happening, they all emanate from NIH funding of our medical science. And this sort of draconian loss of the infrastructure is really of concern to all of us in the medical research enterprise.
As you know, the Trump administration ordered a 15% cap on NIH grants that fund indirect costs like facilities and building expenses. Do you see any merit in their argument that cutting from NIH grants is necessary in order to reduce government spending?
Well, medical research buildings are essentially the factories of medical research. Yes, they're expensive to build, $6,000, $7,000 a square feet. They have modern technologies, equipment, crystallography, electron microscopes, mass specs. These all cost large amounts of money. And the buildings and equipment to do research are truly research costs. The electricians at my institute and the airflow people who take care of all the equipment are as important to the enterprise as any of us faculty members sitting at their computers designing new molecules.
In your long career, you've been on the forefront of virology research, including at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Center. And we know that you're not speaking on behalf of the center today, but your work has helped us better understand viruses like HIV, coronavirus. How important is NIH funding to make this work possible?
NIH is the conduit of our biomedical innovations in both the country and globally. And without the NIH, we would not be the leading medical research country in the world. And it is through the NIH and its funding and its ability to subsidize and innovate research that these discoveries are made.
If you had a crystal ball, how do you think that this will all play out? Because a number of people like yourself are really in strong opposition to the NIH getting the hatchet here.
I obviously don't have a crystal ball, but I do know that it's affecting people, especially young people who want to go and research, which is the pipeline of will they sacrifice all the years of hard work that they go into making a scientific career? Could they do that if the country does not appreciate and value what they're doing?
Dr. Larry Corey, we thank you so much for your time and insight. New developments today in A$AP Rocky's trial in Los Angeles for allegedly shooting at a friend in 2021. Closing arguments are set for Thursday. ABC's Alex Stone joins us now from Los Angeles. Alex, there was talk about A$AP Rocky possibly testifying. What ended up happening in court today?
Yeah, in fact, his attorneys, Lindsay, had indicated that he might testify and that he wanted to talk to the jury and let them hear his side of the story. But today, the judge said, look, you have the ability to testify if you do want to testify, that it's up to you. It's your constitutional right to do it. And A$AP Rocky said, no, I'm not going to do it. Not a big surprise. That would have subjected him to cross-examination from the prosecution. Could have gone very long. These prosecutors, they were on the Robert Durst case. They kept Robert Durst on the stand for 9 days as they cross-examined him there. So this could have been quite the cross-examination from the prosecution. So today, A$AP Rocky is saying no. So closing arguments on Thursday. The jury may get it come Friday. It'll be up to them of was this a real gun? Was it a prop gun? Both sides claiming one or the other. It all comes down to was it a real gun?
And we'll see what the jury decides there. Alex Stone, thank you. Now I want to bring in ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer. And Brian, A$AP chose not to testify. What could have been the risks or even rewards of him taking the stand?
Yeah, so I think the part of the calculus as to whether or not he should take the stand would be where are they at so far in the case from a defense perspective. In a case like this where they're saying that A$AP Rocky, the star witness for the prosecution, is not someone to be trusted, I think it's better to leave that out there for the jury to consider rather than to put A$AP Rocky's credibility and his own statement out there for them to compare and contrast the two. Focus instead in saying the prosecution can't prove their case with the evidence they presented.
Of course, a lot is being said about this case, but what are the main issues here?
I think the central issue, as Alex pointed out, is whether or not this was a real gun or a fake gun. A$AP Rocky's defense is that this is not an assault by a firearm because, in essence, this is not a firearm, and the only one person who can testify to that is A$AP Rocky, and he's not a credible person, someone that the jury should not consider when looking at the evidence. They've, of course, put on their own witnesses, A$AP 12 who was at the scene and gave his rendition of the events as well, but whether or not this is a real gun is, I think, at the heart of the case for both the defense and the prosecution.
And as we said, closing arguments are set for Thursday. What do you feel that each side needs in order to try to impress upon the jury?
I think it's going to be about the credibility of A$AP Rocky. The prosecution is going to really try to build him up and say, you know what? Put away all of the noise about the civil case, about searching for money, about the feud. Did we prove that A$AP Rocky had a gun and fired it at A$AP Rocky and that gun was real? And the prosecution is going to try to stick by that while the defense is going to poke holes in every one of the witnesses that went forward about the credibility of whether or not shell casings were found by Rocky and not law enforcement. And it's really going to be about, as I think the defense pointed out in opening statements, about who you're going to believe.
All right, Brian Buckmeyer for us. Thanks so much. The FBI has discovered 2,400 undisclosed records related to JFK's assassination following an executive order from President Trump last month. The FBI conducted the search after Trump's order declassified the assassination files of JFK, RFK, and Martin Luther King Jr. The JFK search resulted in 14,000 pages of newly inventoried and digitized records and documents that were previously unrecognized. The FBI is now working to transfer the material to the National Archives, which will continue the declassification process. Coming up, dramatic video of a teen and police darting across a busy interstate. Plus, rats, they're no secret when it comes to New York City living. They are everywhere. One way to fix the problem? How about birth control?
What I will say very plainly is rat contraceptive is another control method. So it's not extermination, but it's a way to control populations. And we really want to make sure as a city we're addressing those conditions that are supporting rats.
This AI tool is better than Midjourney for one-time cost because
you can create unlimited AI images with accurate text for a one-time cost. No recurring fees, ever. I found this hidden gem for you. It's called Artistly. Here's what it does. You can turn a single selfie into professional photos in literally minutes, create super consistent 3D characters like the ones you'd see. And product photos instantly. Add or remove elements from your images with lifelike in-painting. Experiment with different styles by transforming your photo. Perfect, detailed prompt for your desired image. The best part? You can train your own AI models to create unlimited professional ads featuring your face. Perfect for businesses or clients. Plus, there's a library of ready-made ad templates to help you stay ahead of